So, I played through Night Agent, which is an anime-inspired action comedy RPG that plays like an interactive anime. And that's not even a joke. If you've ever watched anime, which I'm assuming everyone here has, you've probably at least at one point watched a slice of life school anime. Well, this is it in a nutshell. At least in game form. So you're a school student and you get yourself into a series of mayhem as it just seems to follow you around. From the main character getting waifus who loathe you just to end up living with you in your apartment, to having a demon girl who was sent to kill you actually fall in love with you. Or there's the fact you end up wrecking the entire school during one of your fights. Not to mention the main character fights against zombie ladies that vomit all over you. Yeah, there is a lot of mayhem in this game, and yes, this game is weird, but in a good way. Depending on what you think is funny, of course. I personally thought it was pretty hilarious, but it can be a little over the top for some. So, before I get back into the wacky story that this game offers, which there is a lot of, I'll state that it's a gacha game. You collect scratch cards and use them to get a chance at bringing home the plethora of charming characters within this game, some of which might even be, cross-dressing. Well, at least they're telling us, I guess. So yeah, look out for trap characters. Now, Night Agent has action combat, not unlike Honkai Impact or Punishing Grey Raven. Of course, not as intricate as either of the aforementioned titles, but you get the general idea. Its combat is flashy, responsive, and quite fun to use, with each character having unique abilities and animations. Some even skip. It also uses some pretty solid 3D anime graphics, as the characters look quite pretty and very Japanese inspired, which is never a bad thing. Something else Japanese, however, is the voices. All of the characters have Japanese voices, even the monsters, which can make pummeling these characters into the ground slightly more uncomfortable than you would expect, as they're, well, moaning at you. So I would suggest turning down the volume if you're at work or at a parent's house and just, save it for later. So anyway, back to the story aspect of the game, which is what I believe the major pulling feature of the game. That's not to say that the combat was bad, as like I said, it was quite fun and intuitive. The story is, however, just one of a kind. It's strange, sometimes slightly mistranslated and awkward, but it's funny nevertheless. It plays out like a manga to convey what's going on, like your principal trying to stop a fight, or as mentioned earlier, a vomiting zombie lady. You'll then be whisked into levels in which you need to complete, not all of which are the same, so as to make it repetitive and or boring. However, something to mention is that whilst the game starts off relatively easy, the difficulty quickly jumps, making it quite challenging. This, of course, leads me to the character upgrading. You upgrade your character's gear through in-game cash and items that are grindable from completing levels, so you'll need to grind in order to pump your characters up. But considering the combat is actually fun to use, it's not much of a hassle. Something else to note is that once you've completed a level, you can auto-complete it again, so you don't have to manually do it yourself if you ever find it tedious or boring. However, you do have to pay for this feature with real money. For once, a game that doesn't want you to auto. Strangely refreshing. Besides continuing with the main story, grinding for gear, and collecting more waifus, there are other challenges to undertake, like arenas, brawls, world bosses, towers, and so much more. Oh, and did I mention that instead of an elemental weakness tree, as in water beats fire and so forth, this game uses rock, paper, scissors. Yep, this game is an actual gem. Without spoiling the story, as that would ruin the fun, to summarize, if you enjoy action combat, anime-inspired graphics, a strange comical manga-esque story with lots of characters to collect, a relatively good stamina system, and plenty of challenges to tackle, then you might find yourself enjoying this game more than you should. As I sure did.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it. Yeah. All hard work's gonna be worth it. Ooh,